write something that the adults could read and decide if it was appropriate for their child, and have it be something where they didn't have to worry about sex scenes or, graphic, arms being ripped off or whatever, and everything being descriptive and profanity laced. It's something that they can hand to their young teenager and say, enjoy.
Well, that's quite admirable, actually, because I think it's sometimes they use those, profanities and, hot story ideas just for the sake of using them to try to sell more books. But I tell you what, you can do the same thing if you're a creative writer to keep your audience and to keep people interested in reading the books. So that's very admirable. Good for you.
Oh, thank you. I had someone tell me a few days ago that she's actually rereading the first book before she dives into the second one, and she's reading it with her 10-year-old.
Oh, my
she's
goodness.
Reading it out loud to her 10-year-old because her 10-year-old loves monsters and creatures and scary stuff, and it's not so scary that it's going to bother her. So that made me feel good.
Well, that is wonderful. I mean, the idea that you're writing an adult novel, but in a format where children are interested in the story. I mean, that just proves that you've got quite a storyline going there to keep young people interested. And you're right; they do love monsters and ghosts and those kinds of scary things, but they want to have a little bit of a boundary line where they're not going to have to worry about being, really scared in the end of the thing, especially if their mother is there reading it to them. That's quite an honor, I think.
Yeah, that surprised me. And she's like, well, my child's a little different. It's like, no, that's awesome. I read scary stories when I was a kid too, so that's awesome. The fact that she feels that it's appropriate.
Yes, definitely. Matter of fact, you know what, Liz? I think before I get any farther here, I need to ask you, for the audience out there, how you got those amazing blue eyes of yours. They don't know that over the radio, but you do have some really awesome blue eyes.
Oh, thank you. I can thank my mother's side of the family for that.
Oh, wonderful. Matter of fact,
both of my maternal grandparents have had those blue eyes, so I can definitely thank them for that.
Well, and Sinatra was old blue eyes, and you're definitely the young blue eyes here. This is very nice.
I'm not that young. I'm 40, so I'm not that young.
Well, you look a lot younger than that in your photographs here, so you carry it well, believe me. Yeah, speaking of your parents or your mother, are they interested in reading your books, or what do you tell your family about these things?
My mother has read all of the books. I would finish the book, not even edit it, and print it off and give it to her and, okay, tell me what you think. Do I need to change it? Tell me, tell me now. And she would read it, and it was, don't change anything. Just do your editing, but don't change anything. And my family is, they're asking, when are you going to do a book signing? When is the next book out? I had cousins and different family members who were anxious to get the next book. So that feels pretty good.
Oh, definitely, especially when you have that kind of support from your family, because I know some people out there, some writers specifically, that don't necessarily have the support of their spouses, the people they're in relationships with, their family members, and that makes it a lot harder to, spend the time away from them. That's for one thing. A writer and writing is a solitary task.
I'm pretty solitary anyway. I am quite happy to stay at home for days and never leave my house, which drives most people crazy, but I'm happy with that. Give me Sci-Fi Channel or Discovery Channel, and I'll just leave that on in the background and do whatever. So, I'm good.
That is interesting that you mention that. The idea being that you have something going on in the background, for your writing. I know some people that do that, and they either have music. Some people will put on a certain genre of music that they like, and they kind of helps get them in the mood. But I have found out as well is that if you have something going in the background while you're getting in the zone of writing, it almost kind of helps with the process. Is that what you find?
Not really. I mean, I might be in the kitchen cooking dinner and have this huge idea, or realize as I'm standing there at the stove, I'm mumbling lines of a conversation that I need to put into the book. So for me, I just always have the TV on. That's just, that background noise just kind of helps me not overthink quite as much as I normally do.
Oh, good point.
So it does. Yeah, I tend to overthink everything. My brain does not shut down, and that is an issue I have, especially when I'm having more pain. When I have more pain, my brain just absolutely goes crazy. I cannot stop thinking and come up with these crazy ideas, which is, I think, part of why most of my writing happens when I'm in pain, which most people are the opposite. If they're in pain, they shut down, they don't do things, they try to calm, and so
yes,
more proof that I'm a little different.
That's interesting. You fight the pain with creativity, it sounds like.
Yeah, that distraction, to try to focus on something else. And my brain's going to keep spinning no matter what I do, so might as well try to channel it into something.
Well, that's admirable in itself right there, because most people don't know how to control, those kinds of emotions, whether they're, good emotions or bad emotions. They just let them run amok. And, of course, everyone says that 95% of our self-talk is negative anyway, and sounds like you're able to work through that and actually get things on paper that are productive.
I try to. I'll put it that way. I try to. I definitely have days that are not great and are rather negative, but I definitely try to flip that around. And even if I'm having one of those days, I try to turn it so, yeah, it's negative thoughts and negative emotions, but maybe direct it toward a specific character or, something like that.
Yes. That is, I think, probably what writers try to do without the motivation of the actual physical pain. So it's amazing you can do that. The interesting thing also I find fascinating is that the idea that a writer actually ends up having to rewrite and or edit. How do you handle that idea where you go back and you take a second look at things, or do you not worry about that and have another person do the editing of your stories?
I do all of my editing, and I'm actually getting ready to do the final read through of book 4 before I actually publish. That's the only thing I have left to do. But for me, it's not a matter of rewriting. It's a matter of changing maybe just the wording in a sentence, or, okay, this doesn't sound quite as clear as I want it to be, so let me change that little thing. I do not do any major rewrites or, rewrite chapters. I've heard some authors actually will go in and, I don't like this chapter at all, and they'll just scrap the whole thing and rewrite it. And I don't do that. With me, it's just
so I'm hoping you can still hear me there. I think you cut out a little bit, but can you hear me, Liz?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. It is fascinating to me that whenever I've written something and I put it aside for a day and I come back to it, it's almost as if I'm looking at something that someone else has written, and I get a different perspective on it. Have you experienced that as yourself?
I put things aside for usually a couple of weeks at least before I go back and I reread and change anything. I am super critical of everything I do. So if I don't set it aside and I almost forget what I've written, I instantly hate it and don't want it. Just even as I'm editing these books, I'm reading through them and I'm critical of every word that's on the page. Even though I have people asking me, when's the next book? Or, I loved the last book, or I love this character. I still doubt everything that's in each book. So I have to be really careful about going back and changing, and that's why I let it sit for days or even weeks to kind of separate myself from it a little bit, and go back in and look at it.
And do you find that more often than not, you have a better perspective the second time around when you go in and do this, and you're glad that you were able to review it before it was published?
I do. Again, I don't usually, even if it's something that seems like maybe I didn't like it, like maybe a character has done something, or something has happened that, I personally don't like, I still leave it. Unless it is something that just completely ruins the story.
Yeah.
So I try to not change very much after I write something. When I write it, I know I have an intention. As I'm putting everything down, I have specific intention of this is the story I want to tell. So I leave it.
Well, that's takes some discipline to do that. I know for sure, because sometimes you'll even pick up something that you've written that's already published, and you criticize yourself for it, and you just go, "I wish I could do that over again." That's got to be a difficult situation sometimes.
I feel that way about every book. And that is why I don't change a lot of things, because if I start changing, I will just keep changing and keep changing and keep changing, and it will never get published.
Yes.
So I have to draw the line and say, nope, I will fix things. I will clarify things, grammar, missing words, rewrite a clumsy sentence, even add a few sentences to the story. I will not rewrite anything.
Well, that's a lot of discipline. Good for you. I just wanted to ask you as well, now that you've got this book series basically done, but now you're working on the prequel series. How are you finding that? Is that a difficult thing to do, to set aside a long storyline and